Between 2019 and 2024, the average American lived in a state where data center capacity grew by roughly 160%. Over that same stretch, the best causal estimate anyone has produced says the rates those households paid ended up about 6% lower than they otherwise would have been. Their bills still went up. Every one of those statements is true at the same time in the same states for the same people. The number that fell and the number that rose were measuring two different things. Electricity does not get priced the way gasoline gets priced. A gas station buys a gallon, marks it up, and sells it to you. The cost of the thing is the cost of the thing. A utility mostly does not buy anything. It builds. Poles, wires, substations, transformers, power plants. Enormous amounts of concrete and copper that get paid for once and then sit there for decades. Those costs exist whether you turn your lights on or not. The regulator's job is to let the utility recover them. So it takes that giant pile of fixed cost and divides it across every kilowatt hour anyone in the territory buys. Your rate is the answer to a division problem. Big number on top, total electricity sold on the bottom. So the price you pay depends only partly on how much electricity you use. It also depends on how much everyone else uses, because everyone else is in your denominator. Think about a highway. A state builds 8 lanes to survive rush hour. The concrete costs what it costs. 10,000 cars a day, 30,000 cars a day. The bill for pouring it never changes. Now split that construction cost between the drivers. Every additional car that shows up makes every other driver's share of the concrete smaller. The road does not get cheaper, the slice does. That is what a data center looked like to a utility for most of the last decade. A customer that showed up, plugged in, and then ran flat out at 3 in the morning on a Tuesday in February, which is exactly when all that expensive equipment was otherwise sitting idle. A house is a terrible customer by comparison. It spikes at 6 in the evening, collapses overnight, and forces the utility to keep expensive equipment standing by for a few hours a day. A building full of servers just draws, constantly, forever, and pays for wires that were already built and already paid for. The denominator got bigger. Everyone's slice got smaller. The rule did what the rule does. If the arithmetic was running in that direction, tens of millions of people did not simply hallucinate the opposite. Call the stretch when the road still had room the headroom era. It was not a local quirk. 3 researchers, 2 at the Electric Power Research Institute and 1 at a firm called Watershed, went looking for it across the entire country, and they built the study specifically to kill the boring explanation, which is that data centers just move to places where power was already going to be cheap. Control for that, and the effect survives. Doubling a state's data center capacity pushed residential rates down by roughly 4%. That paper is now being circulated around Washington by tech industry groups like NetChoice, under headlines announcing that data centers are lowering your electric bill. It is a real result. It is also a result with an expiration date printed on the side. And that part rarely makes the headline. Because the whole thing rests on one condition. There has to be room on the road. An 8-lane highway absorbs new traffic beautifully, right up until the moment it does not. There is no gentle slope. There is a Tuesday where the merge works, and a Wednesday where it does not. And the only fix is pouring new concrete, which takes years and costs a fortune. The grid hit its Wednesday. New demand stopped fitting inside plants and wires that already existed. Serving it started requiring new plants and new wires, bought at today's prices, financed at today's interest rates. And the division problem quietly turned inside out. While the next kilowatt hour costs less than the average of everything already on the system, growth dragged the average down. Once the next kilowatt hour cost more, growth started dragging the average up. Same equation, same rule, running the same way it always had. Nobody amended it. Nobody voted. The inputs changed and the output reversed, which means somewhere between that reversal and your mailbox, an abstract shift in cost structure had to become an actual number. It becomes a number at an auction. The grid operator, for about 67 million people across 13 states and Washington, D.C., does not wait for the lights to go out to find out whether it has enough power. It buys promises, years in advance. Generators bid in, offering to be available on the worst afternoon of a summer that is still 2 years away. The operator works up the stack, cheapest offer first, until it has bought enough. Then it takes the price of the last offer it needed and pays that price to everyone, including the generator that would have shown up for a fraction of it. One expensive bid at the end of the line sets the price for the entire system. What the operator buys depends on what it forecasts, and the forecast has been absorbing enormous quantities of announced data center load, including projects that have been announced but not built, and some that never will be. The promises get bought anyway. Somebody pays for them either way. Then it lands on bills, not as a line labeled data centers, as a slightly larger version of a charge that was already there, buried in a statement most people glance at once and file. In July of 2026, that auction cleared at $325 per megawatt day. That figure is not what the market wanted. It is a ceiling. Federal regulators had approved a cap, and the bidding ran straight into it for the third auction in a row, the way water finds the top of a dam. The operator ran the same auction again without the cap, as a simulation, to see what would have happened. The unconstrained price came out roughly 70% higher. In one region around Chicago, more than double. And after hitting that ceiling, after paying the highest price the rules allowed, the auction still did not buy enough power to meet the operator's own reliability target. It has now missed that target more than once. Paying more, getting less, with the cap holding the visible number down and a very different number sitting underneath it, waiting for the cap to expire. A ceiling only helps for as long as somebody is building the thing that makes the ceiling unnecessary. Barely anyone is. That last auction, the one that hit the cap and came up short, attracted a rounding error's worth of genuinely new generation. Not because developers are uninterested, because you cannot conjure a power plant on an auction schedule. To connect anything to the grid, you join a queue. You file, you wait, you get studied, you wait some more. A project finishing that process today has typically spent about 5 years in line. And of everything that entered those queues between 2000 and 2018, only around 1 in 5 ever made it out. The rest withdrew, having burned years and money to learn what the upgrades would cost. At the end of 2025, more than 2,000 gigawatts of generation and storage were sitting in line, close to double what the entire country has actually installed. Assume you clear it. Now you need equipment. Transformers and switchgear are not products you order. They are products you get in line for, from a small number of factories using specialized steel and enormous quantities of copper. Large power transformers now run 3 to 4 years from order to delivery, and in the tightest corners of the market, longer than that. Switchgear has stretched past a year. Utilities rebuilding aging equipment are bidding against data center developers for the same factory slots, and the ones with money win. The auction reprices every 12 months. The hardware that would answer it arrives on a clock 4 times slower. A single large transformer failing in the wrong place is now a planning emergency rather than a maintenance ticket. The widening cannot arrive before the traffic does. Not for a season. Structurally, for years. A spike corrects itself. A bottleneck made of steel and copper does not. And while it lasts, the division problem stays pointed at your bill. Those two numbers from the beginning never contradicted each other. For a decade, the rule spread a fixed cost across a growing pile of electricity, and households got a discount they never noticed and never asked for. Then the road filled up, and the same rule started spreading a growing cost across those same households, and now they notice. The discount was never a gift. It was a byproduct of a condition, and the condition ended. State legislatures are currently arguing about whether data centers raise your power bill. In the first 6 weeks of 2026 alone, more than 300 bills on this landed in over 30 state houses. And the honest answer to the question all 300 of them are asking is that data centers lowered your bill and then raised it through the identical mechanism without anyone touching the mechanism. So the fight over whether the servers are to blame is a fight over the wrong thing entirely. The rule was never neutral. It was pointed in a pleasant direction. Pleasant felt like fair, and nobody read it. Now it is pointed the other way, and what you pay comes down to who holds the pen when it gets rewritten. That is being decided right now, in rate cases and auction rules and legislative sessions that will never make the news. Your bill is the output of that document. You are just not one of the people writing it.